Thank you everyone so much for coming, and thank you to our live streamers for joining us today. We are 1GovSummit today, just to represent that we are all one government working together, one common goal and innovation. All right, so I'm just briefly going to touch upon who IdeaScale is first. We are FedRAMP certified. We were established in 2009, actually by a White House initiative, and we are an idea management platform. So we're all about crowdsourcing and innovation. And now, without further ado, I'm going to introduce Tim Sussman, our Senior Vice President of the Public Sector at IdeaScale, and he will formally kick things off and welcome you.
Thank you, Lizzie, and round of applause for Lizzie for putting on this event today. Thank you, and bringing everyone together. Would it shock you to learn that just 7% of full-time federal workers are under the age of 30, compared to about 20% in the US labor force? Just 7% under the age of 30. Additionally, according to a recent poll, just 14% of Generation Z aspires to work in government. Just 14%. So massive challenges facing government and facing organizations that you all represent. So within your organization, for each of you, thinking about how do we attract young, diverse talent that brings fresh ideas and skill sets to our organization and workforce? And maybe more importantly, how do we retain that talent? And what I want to stress to each of you is you each are making differences in your work as leaders, as inspiration colleagues, as teammates, whether it's process improvement, employee engagement, reducing administrative burdens. Our jobs, your jobs are tough. And the small steps and progress that you make every day, it's not only worth it, but the next generation is looking up to you. And we are so happy to bring together not only all of you into this room and online today, but with amazing speakers that we consider inspirations. And innovation is problem solving. And that's the theme of the event today. Solving problems and solving challenges and doing that together. So without further ado, I'd like to bring up our first speaker, Robert Bornhofen, Director of Innovation at DC Water, and Dolly from DC Water. So please welcome to the stage.
Hey, welcome to DC Water. We're delighted to have you here. And since Tim started giving us the statistics here, I have a couple of my own here. So, but he talked about, well, anyways, let me, Laura, one more slide. Oh, I got the clicker, okay. There we go, that's me, okay. And there's the other two speakers for today. Can I advance the slide? Okay, all right, let's get started. Let's go back, all right. So, the water sector is different though. I remember Dolly Gata. She's a graduate student at George Washington University. She's also an architect. Her baccalaureate's in architecture, and she's done architectural work in India. So when we were looking at our summer intern class, we had like 35 summer interns from the nearby universities. All I had to do was share with Dolly our environmental, social governance ESG report that talked about what we're doing in the water sector to keep the water cleaner. This building, for example, one of the trivia questions we're using the therms, the BTUs, the energy in the sewer pipes below this building to heat and air condition the building. Okay, we're using a lot of renewable energy, but this is one of the most coolest industries around, and that being the water utility, wastewater treatment facility industry. So, but we're attracting a lot of young people. Gen Zs, and what's the other one? Gen something. There's so many different letters, but to be able to work and apply their skills for the good of society And this is the best job that I've ever had as a in a nonprofit industry where we're tasked with keeping things clean, safe, and reliable. So anyways, that's my little opening here on DC Water. But this Saturday is the commissioning of one of our deep tunnels, okay? This river is the Anacostia River, okay? And of course, the Potomac is the other one that it connects to for you out-of-town people. Back in 1966, President Johnson said, if you fell into the Potomac, you better get a tetanus shot, okay? I heard that President Harrison back in the day, he's known for having the shortest tenure ever as a president. And history notes that he, at the inauguration, didn't bundle up very well and got pneumonia. But I also, AJ, his historian, told me that there's another theory that said that he drank some of the river water. This is like the 1830s, okay? And got E. coli and he died from that. So that could have been what happened. But this river is remarkably much cleaner than 2 years ago. When I first got here, we had trash coming down the river. And I'll be really brief here. What we have here with the older cities, we laid down sewer pipes back in the day for just sewer, right? And it worked great. But then we started putting in concrete and rain gutters and storm drains. And every time it rained, everything went into the same sewer pipe. These were combined sewer pipes, and we had overflows that when they got to a certain point beyond our capacity, they had outflows into the river, okay? And into the river went sewage, and rainwater. It was mixed. So with this deep water, this deep tunneling system, 18 miles of tunnels, about 120 feet deep, about a 36-foot diameter, sometimes 48, but it's quite big. We store 157 million gallons of excess wastewater and rainwater during heavy storms. And so the river is getting remarkably much cleaner. And then we're going to start next with the Potomac River. We got 5 more miles to go, and we're going to have both rivers clean. But you'll be probably seeing swimming back in the Potomac River within a year, 18 months. So it's amazing. And to be here during this time and see the changes in quick order is just fascinating for us. So anyways, so I started off with slides on crowdsourcing. And I was told, no, they all want to hear about innovation. So I said, okay, yeah, Lizzie's hiding back there. So a little bit about DC Water, okay? Nation's capital, obviously. We've got about 70 square miles, okay? 700, we can read this faster than I can say it. But we have a lot of visibility with the home of EPA, for example, in the government. We get a lot of regulatory oversight, a lot of attention. But like most organizations, we have challenges, hence the need to innovate, hence the need to use IdeaScale to be able to source the crowd for ideas as to how we can address these challenges. And I could say the first one, aging infrastructure, IdeaScale was helpful. We came up with some ideas to be able to detect where water mains were leaking using artificial intelligence. I'll get to that. Also sewers as well, and preventing the overflows. But these are the challenges we have. It's the infrastructure, balancing budgets during high inflation. The cost of energy went up almost 50% this past year. Chemicals went up a lot. And so when you have a fixed budget, that really it's difficult to be able to balance everything. Climate change, of course, we're getting more storms. We're getting droughts, storms, rains. This has been a really dry summer for us, but when it rains, it really rains. And so there's something going on here with the climate. So we're taking measures. We're building our 500-year wall, for storms. We're doing a lot with our resilience efforts, looking at renewable fuels and so on. And of course, as the price goes up for treating wastewater, so do the rates. And so we have to make sure it's affordable to our low-income customers. So it's not an easy job. All right. So I wanted just a little bit of background here. Okay. Now I'm going to shift into the innovation mode. We've Tim mentioned that innovation essentially is solving the right problems. There's so many problems. What are the right problems that matter? And then how do we go about solving those problems? You know, it kind of begins with problem. What can we do about the problem? What are some ideas? Okay. And then how do we know which ideas are the best ideas and so on? So we've been doing that since, before the Civil War. But what we're known for a lot is our wastewater treatment facility, where we treat the wastewater. Okay, that's our Blue Plains facility. Okay, and we've got some really smart scientists in that area. But what we didn't have across the whole enterprise, because we have water, we've got sewer, we've got fleet, we've got the back, all these other business units. We didn't really do any innovation in that area. Okay, we just focused on one little area. So we decided, our current CEO, David Gaddis, decided that we need to kind of open up the aperture and do problem solving for the whole organization. And that's what we're using IdeaScale for. And that's pretty much the primary purpose here, is to be able to leverage our smart people, both within the organization and outside, to come up with what we think are the best ideas to solve our problems. All right. So a little bit, again, I'm talking innovation, not crowdsourcing, but it's hard not to talk about the two interchangeably. But this is really my experience. I'm not a water person. I'm not an engineer. I've been helping organizations solve problems for 20 years, different industries, different companies. This is by far the most interesting, but this is a blue collar industry, more or less. These are the guys that tend to be guys, mostly male, but these are the guys out, the crews that go out in the trucks, down the sewers, looking at the water pipes, adjusting valves, doing fire hydrant tests. This is really blue collar. It's about pay. It's about the group they're with, and about doing the job and going home. Okay. They've never really been asked what they think we should do about problems, or what is the problem that you're having out in the field that we're not aware of. And so it's been challenging to kind of break through and have those dialogues, and we're making progress on that. But we really start with our where we want to be in 5 years. Whether it's your mission, your vision, where do you want to be? Okay. What are your goals, your strategy? And that's what we have 5 different pillars, starting off with a reliable operation, a sustainable operation, okay, a resilient operation. We talk about our employees, okay. We talk about training, okay. We talk about affordability, but we've got specific areas that we're looking at to align what we're doing to where we want to be. We look at innovation as an enabler to get there, as one enabler, okay? So when we look at reliability, for example, we're looking at problems that are not making us reliable enough, and what can we do to address those problems? So that's what we align to always. Every business case shows the alignment to 1 or 2 strategic areas. Having a credible innovation program, okay? Not a part-time person on a checkbox saying we have innovation, but having dedicated people, having dotted line volunteers, ambassadors, if you will, maybe a community of practice, but it's a concerted effort. It's with tools like a crowdsourcing tool, it's processes, it's roles, but it's a bona fide innovation program. And then finally, this has been a challenge, but risk, an appetite for risk. Okay, knowing that we've not done this before, but can we manage the risk? Do we know how to mitigate what can go wrong? Okay, so there needs to be an appetite for that, and that's why we start off small. We might do a prototype, we might do a pilot, we might see a demonstration, just to get our feel for it. Okay, so a little bit of time, a little bit of effort without going head first. So again, these are 3 important things: a way to navigate how you get there, a credible program to get there, and then tolerance for some uncertainty, and then being able to build up your competency to be able to manage those risks and actually do things that you've never done before, you know, but you can do. Oh, too far back. All right, Dolly. Okay, I'm gonna take a
Thank
break.
you, Robert. So innovation, here we all are talking about problems, challenges. So the whole process of innovation starts with problem. We first, if there is a problem, then we start looking for solutions. And yeah, through solutions, it can be like your sources could be your own employees, your vendors, or any tag events. That is the whole process. And as and soon we go through it, we start filtering those ideas. And after filtering the one with deemed potential to address the problem, we go for the approval of that particular problem, of that particular idea. So for me, when I started my summer internship, my first experience with crowdsourcing, not exactly crowdsourcing, but innovation was like we had a problem to inspect our large diameter water sewer pipes. And that was a problem. And we were looking for a solution. And then we found an idea, like there was already a solution outside. That was a sewer scout. And it helped that we went through a demonstration. That was a pilot project. And we are in the process of understanding it. So yes, this is the whole process. And this is how it also gives us an opportunity to generate a new value.
Let me add one thing though.
Yeah.
So great example. So this sewer scout device, I came across that last February at a water conference. It's a relatively new product. I'm not promoting that, but I'm promoting risk. Okay. It's not widely used. Okay. It's being used in Cincinnati, one utility in the country. And so to innovate, be able to convince some of the key stakeholders that this is something that we think we can look at and prototype. And we had them out here this summer. And what's neat about this is that it's a 3D camera. Okay, it does a 360 review or view area. It can zoom, but it floats down the sewer pipes. And it can look for certain things. It can look for corrosion, for example. Hydrogen sulfide can cause corrosion, and the corrosion eats away at the sewer pipes. Okay, they can collapse. They can look at they can see tree intrusions, branches coming in. They can look at cracks. But this is something we've never done before. This is technology, whereas and this is also, there's a lot of artificial intelligence in this as well. But again, this is an example of starting off with oh, there we are. Is that you, Laura? Okay. Okay. All right. So, wow, this is great. So I think, let's see, is it up here? No, that's something, no, that's not up here, but we're doing a number of things. But I'm gonna talk to you now. I'm gonna shift gears into back to innovation, back to some cool things that we're doing right now with I'll call it transformative type technologies. And on the left, this is different though. This is we use like a tractor, and it's attached to a cord, and it kind of goes down along the sewer pipe. And along the way, it's taking video. Okay, we developed some software with a partner, and we put a patent on that, and it's called oh, what is that thing called? What is that? Okay, it'll come to me. So. But it goes down, it looks at the video, captures the video, it digitizes the video and goes against a database of known images like that and comes back and tells us what's there. Okay. And that is, again, you can see it's the cracks, tree root intrusions, corrosion. That's what's being done on that device. Okay. We're using another tool. Again, these are all, what's interesting about this industry is that there's like 50,000 utilities, water, sewer utilities, a lot of small ones, small cities, large ones like DC Water. But there's a lot of utilities, and they all have pretty much the same problems. You know, we've got infrastructure issues. We can't find leaks. We want to make sure the sewer pipes are in order. And so we find a lot of solutions already out there. We don't have to invent them here. Now, this one we invented. We teamed up with Wipro, and it was called Pipe Sleuth, is what we call it. Okay, but these other two are commercial products. The middle one is Fido. It's out of the UK. It's being used at a number of utilities, and that we use it's like the shape of a hockey puck, and you put that on both ends of a water main, a main water pipe, and it listens to within the water pipe. Everything is within a certain frequency range, so a water burst or a drip would have a certain frequency versus a jackhammer versus a siren, and it picks up within that known frequency for water, picks up those leaks, okay, captures a location, goes against its database of known signatures of that type of sound, comes back with the prediction. It will allow us to, and we've prototyped this, it's worked well. We can pinpoint the location within a meter of where the leak is. We can size the leak, whether it's a gusher or just a little trickle. And it's size and location. So now we can get a backhoe, we can go in there, we can dig up where that leak is, and we can repair it without ripping up the whole street. Okay. So that's a game changer for us. It really is transformative. In the old days, they walked around with a listening stick, or they had loggers, but this allows us to pinpoint the location and size it. Okay. We're interested in the large leaks. Okay. Our infrastructure, the average water pipe is about 80 years old. 80. That's long. That's a long time for a water pipe. And so we're losing a lot of water. And we're going to use this device to be able to identify and plug up those holes. The third one is, again, these areas are outside of our wastewater treatment area. So these are new areas that my program is focused on, is looking across the enterprise. We have a lot of during the sewer pipes get clogged. Okay, there's branches down there. We got fat, oil, and grease. It slows the flow, and the flow, when it gets obstructed, it starts to go up, and then the sewer pipes, the manhole covers, we have an overflow. Also, we get backups. The houses, they've got lateral pipes that empty their sewage into the water pipe. That backs up, goes into people's basements. Okay. So that's not a good thing. We had some really severe problems back in 2020. And so this device here, as you can see, the manhole cover is up on top. This ultrasonic device hangs down right above the flow of the sewer, and it can use that technology to determine the level of the sewer and the flow. Okay. When the level gets above a certain point, it sends a communication to us. We know that there's a problem at this particular sewer manhole. We go out there with a big vacuum truck and we kind of suck out the what's obstructing it. Okay. We've eliminated overflows. Okay. We don't have any more. I mean, if they do happen, we don't have a device at that manhole cover. But again, we're using technology to solve problems that we've always had before. Okay, whether it be the water main leaks or the overflows in the sewers, or being able to detect problems within the sewers. And then we know where to go to fix the sewer pipes. Okay, this is innovation in our sector here. Okay, one more. So, but that's today. Here's tomorrow. Okay, Dolly, you know the GPT or the generative AI. You want to talk to that, please? Thanks. Yeah.
Yes. So my first project here as a summer intern was about understanding GPT-4. And as and when I understood, I had a discussion with Robert, and Robert was like, okay, now let's find a way how we can implement it at DC Water. So with generative AI, it comes with a lot of risk and like how an organization, can adopt an AI which will affect organization. So we started with our implementation, we found ways how we could use it at DC Water. Should I give that example of
Yeah,
it?
go
Yes.
please. Yeah.
So we started with recording our meetings. So the minutes of meeting, which we get, we don't need anyone to sit and write. We can just have AI to do that for us. We started with that using GPT-4, and most of our board meetings, which are public meetings, got recorded, and uh, we were able to convert and summarize them into minutes of meeting. And then with that, a lot of people showed interest. So he had conducted a lead and learn where almost 200 of employees were interested to know about GPT-4. And then we came up with a community of practitioners, community of AI practitioners, where about 45 of our employees, we all work together. We try to understand how we can use GPT-4 at DC Water. And with that, right now, we are also coming up with do's and don'ts policy for how we can use this AI at our organization without any problems.
But innovation is more than just technology, right? Okay. It's also about process. It's about risk. Okay. And there is risk with the way generative AI can be used. Okay. The information we get may not be 100% reliable. The queries that we make get part of the large learning model. Okay. So we have to be careful what we say. Everything we do is public record. So if there's ever a request, freedom of information request, and what we're doing, it's all subject to that. So imagine this: Dolly's sitting at her terminal, her laptop, and typing in a GPT-4 command that says something like, "Who else?" Let's see. What's better? Okay. Let's see. DC Water is interested in what other cities are doing to be able to prevent urban flooding. Okay. I'll use Singapore. It's a small city with a lot of people. What is Singapore, New York, Philadelphia, and Boston doing to be able to prevent urban flooding? Okay. So it's out there. DC Water is asking about what other utilities are doing, okay? We get back a response that says all these different things that we should be doing, okay? And we don't do 2 or 3 of those. We get an urban flood and something bad happens. So it's public record. We were told, we did research, we were told what we could have done. We didn't do it, okay? So we're somewhat liable on this. So we have to be careful how we use the tool. It's all teachable, all coachable, but we just can't dive into it. So we're working right now with our legal counsel, coming up with a set of best practices, looking at how we can audit the use of the tool, who gets the tool, the eligibility for the tool. But it's more than just the technology as you think it through. So that's the generative AI. But as Dolly mentioned, we had an amazing turnout, people interested in new technology. And we're using it. I mean, I love it. It's a fantastic tool, but it's you gotta be careful with it. We're looking at going from a more of a reactionary mode with problems, dealing with problems after they happen, to a more proactive approach. So we're using a lot of sensors. We have close to 50,000 sensors at our wastewater treatment facility. We measure almost everything. And when something goes wrong, we get alerted, okay? We're looking at taking that over into our water pipes and sewer pipes and other assets, being able to keep track of changes in water pressure, for example, okay? We call them transients. So a lot of pressure in a water pipe can stress the water pipe. Think of a balloon, you keep on blowing it up, it's gonna pop. Low pressure can also compromise the pipe and let in bacteria, boil water alerts. So we want to be able to use that data, use it smartly, and be able to anticipate and treat problems before they happen. So much more prescriptive here. So we're looking at doing much more with technology. We be able to build a digital twin or a virtual twin of our existing water pipes, and looking at how we can do it, depict it digitally and do some what if analyses. Start playing. What if we lose a pump station, for example? What's the impact? So we can start to look at, or a reservoir. We start to play with how that would be depicted digitally, so we can better prepare. We're using AI and algorithms to take a look at our water pipes, and looking at data that we have, historic data, current data, number of water main breaks, the type of soil. These algorithms are pretty involved, but we're using this information to be able to predict where within that network of pipes we're going to have problems next year. Okay, so it's a predictive way to be able to look at certain attributes and be able to use the model to tell us what we should be looking at to replace. Okay, so I mentioned soil type, the number of highs and lows, the transients is also another indicator. The geography around that area, traffic. There's a number of variables that get factored into this algorithm. So we're using AI to predict what might happen. Okay, so these are three areas, and again, I keep on using the same footer here, but it's really about making an impact. Okay, we don't innovate for the sake of innovating. We want to be able to look at that strategic plan, those objectives. We want to make an impact in terms of getting closer to it, those goals. All right, here, I got it. Oh yeah, this one. So I stayed late one night just thinking of all the things that have gone wrong or could go wrong. Okay, and you probably recognize most of these. Okay, I've been through all of these, except I haven't been through the regulatory compliance issue yet, but everything else I've been through, okay, in varying degrees. This is what you have to think about. I talked about that appetite for risk, right? You need to kind of look at these, and that's the second one, the risk adversity, fear of the unknown, lack of trust, lack in our ability to manage these projects, okay? This deep tunnel system that I talked about early on, that's a 25-year program, $3 billion funded program, and it was amazing. But we thought we could manage this, and we did manage it. Okay, if we hadn't done that, we'd still be polluting the river. Okay, so we didn't have a choice. But these are things that can go wrong. I'm not going to go through all 12 of these, but you can kind of get a feel for why this job is so both challenging and rewarding to be able to work through this. But we got to make sure we've got the resources up front, the money, the people, the tools. We got to make sure we got key stakeholders behind us, supporting us, okay, with the staff. We need to make sure that we're communicating what we're doing. And we get out of this groupthink, this silo mentality, okay? Crowdsourcing is about busting up those silos, being able to work across the organization, okay? Not just one group. And so everyone has a chance or an opportunity to look at the problem and share what they think can be done. Okay. All right. And then that's fine, Laura. So again, depending upon the industry, well, most innovation projects fail. And when I say fail, I mean they're not disasters, but they fail to meet the full expectations. Okay, it might be partial, or it might be you get to a prototype stage and you say, no, it's not going to work. The technology is not reliable. Okay, there's a number of reasons, but they all don't work. And unlike IT, we have requirements and you code and you test it and you validate it. This is dealing with fuzzy concepts, dealing with technologies that you don't know for sure if they're going to work in your environment. Okay, you don't know if the people are going to take to it, the employees. They might reject it. There's a lot of unknowns that we have to test as we go along and validate. And if it doesn't doesn't map very well, we exit. We take the we stop the project. Okay, but we try again and again, and some of these we get through, but it's not an easy task. Hence the appetite for risk. Laura, next slide. Okay. Oh, you got it, Dolly. Okay. And this is your slide, Dolly. Okay.
Yes.
Right.
So I have a question for all of you. Like, why do you think innovation fails? Like, any volunteers?
Risk first culture or
Yes. So that is one of the reasons that most of the employees or like people are not comfortable with change. It gets difficult for them to adopt. They are reluctant to adopt new things. Any other? Yes, that is also one of the reason. With that, adding to that, there are not even like when we put so we had launched a campaign. That was also my first time again with understanding what crowdsourcing is. And we launched a campaign about how 4th of July, like the campaign was about how one can celebrate 4th of July being sustainable. It was out there. We did receive ideas like how they can do it, but they were not a lot of them. So there were not enough of ideas for us to pick one great idea and say that, okay, they were able to we were able to find a solution to a new problem. That is one of, even with that, with relating it to not enough ideas, we end up selecting a wrong idea. Like it might not be appropriate to the situation and we might just come up and select a wrong idea and it will not help us with innovating.
You know, one of the benefits of crowdsourcing isn't just the ideas you get, it's the engagement, it's the employees, it's the culture. Okay. And that's one of my key metrics, is looking at how many employees have signed up with the tool. They have an IdeaScale account, and how many are participating, how many ideas, comments, but it's the people. And if you can get the people, get the employees caring enough to be able to participate in a challenge, that's a very positive sign. The more people you have participating, the more ideas you get, the more review you get, the more buy-in you get. Okay, that to me is really, really important, is the engagement piece. Okay, the ideas follow, but you need to have a base of employees that's trending up, and that's how you sustain it over time as well. They show the interest, and being able to recognize where the best ideas come from. Okay, recognize the individual. Okay, I had a team here. This is the room for our board of directors meeting. I had a team here, and they were recognized by our board members. Okay, it didn't cost me a thing, but it meant so much to them to be recognized. So, anyways, again, it's employee engagement, which is critical. Okay, all right. Oh, you got okay. Thanks.
And again, most of our ideas come from employee engagement. So they are the ones who are facing the real problem. But other than that, we have like technological partners, our vendors, then startups, some research that can also help us with coming up with good ideas.
I like your upper right. You know, not all smart people work for us. How true that is. Okay, we have a lot of smart people at DC Water. We tend to think the same way. Okay, but doing it for 20 years, right? You bring in our summer interns, for example, a whole different viewpoint. Our vendors, our academia contacts, but again, it's that diversity of people, different experiences and roles. Okay, their training, they look at things differently, and I think that's the richness of being able to look at a variety of different sources for ideas. So, and that's how we bust these silos. Okay. So, and that's important for us, at least, because we've got these separate silos that they don't really talk back and forth. The tool is overarching, and so it gets everyone on the same page. Next slide. That's yours. That's yours.
So why do we crowdsource at DC Water? Again, it's a lot of learning when we have facilities in different locations, and it helps to learn with when we don't get a chance to work with each other, but whenever there is any kind of problem, we get a chance to meet and learn from each other what they are doing at their site, at their problems. Lot of ideas. The more ideas we get, it is more likely to get a great idea. Also the culture here, which helps a lot of employee engagement, and again it helps with a lot of learning. It is also the vision here, which we have to. It's important to know what is our main problem, and it is very important to solve the correct and right problem at that time. Yes. I'll change the
All right.
slide.
Okay.
And this is our crowdsourcing website at IdeaScale, which is so we want to solve problems, key problems and challenges at DC Water that keeps us from the long-term impacts. And this is where we have all our campaigns and all our employees have signed up. And if there is any kind of idea that they have, they come and post it on our website here.
You know, every floor in this building, where the elevators open up, you'll see photographs. And every photograph is of people, the employees. Okay, it's about the people here. Okay, and that transfers into this landing page here. It's nothing but our employees. Okay, it's meant to be inclusive. Everyone's on here, more or less. So, and that's what they see, and that's what they click on. Okay, one more, please. All right. So, oh boy, challenges to overcome. Okay. Now we're shifting a little bit into crowdsourcing. I had to slip a couple of crowdsourcing slides in there. Okay. Okay. All right. Dolly mentioned the generative AI. You know, it's such a fast-moving technology. A year ago, there was a 3.5 version came out, and then in the spring, the 4.0 version came out. There's a 5th version. Google Baird has their version. It's just taken off. It's exploding. It's really disruptive right now, and nobody can keep track of this. Dolly almost, okay, but the senior executives, they can't keep up with this, okay? So when you start pitching, we should be doing generative AI, they don't even know what I'm talking about, okay? That's one of the challenges we have, okay? And rather than try to work it from the top down, okay, we're looking at the middle, okay? We formed a community of practitioners, as Dolly mentioned, 45 people who volunteered to be part of this community. I did a kind of a brown bag special. Is it 5 minutes you said, or 5 more slides? Okay, I'll wrap it. Okay, all right. So I had, of the 245 wanted to be part of this groundswell here that we had. Okay, so that's kind of like how I was able to figure out how best to tackle this problem and get a group of people who can report up and report down to be able to get some traction. So that's one of the problems we have is that was GTP, the same thing with crowdsourcing. They don't understand what crowdsourcing is at the senior level. They really don't. It's something new for the water sector. Now, where I used to work, different industry, our numbers were really high. People knew what it was, but this is blue collar, really is. All right, next slide, please. All right, so I got like 2 minutes right there, Lizzie. Okay, all right, we'll keep this. I'll try to keep you on schedule. So these are all the practices that I'm passing on. You probably recognize most of these. I know your experience, but these are the tried and true. This is what I always take a look at, make sure that we're following these practices, starting with an executive sponsor. Okay, it's hard to get things done without having an EVP or a VP behind me, and then everything going all the way down. And when we're crowdsourcing, sometimes we have to go beyond leadership to find that right idea, that question to ask. Okay, and we go to the source, we go to the employees. So, and all the way down. So next slide. All right. All right, good. Final Final slide, Lizzie. All right. So back to crowdsourcing. So where do I start? Formulate an approach. We underwent the training program with IdeaScale. We learned how to not only set up the campaign, but how to communicate, how to engage with the organization. You just don't launch a campaign. You have to think it through, have a strategy. Okay. So we had a strategy. We communicated it, different channels. Okay. We picked the right problem that we thought would resonate among the employees. Okay. Something that mattered to them. Okay. We staffed and maintained the challenge. We engaged the conversations. You know, we tried to stimulate and we tried to tag people to get them involved in the communication threads. We made it social. And you know, I'm trying to think. And then we got feedback from people, what they liked. We made it fun. Crowdsourcing is, I think it's fun. Some of the executives would say that we do surveys every year. Okay. You know, the static surveys, you know, how do you like this, and this, and maybe a Likert scale, you know, always, sometimes. It doesn't work. It's not the same as something that's real and dynamic. Okay. I put a question out, I put an idea out there. You three comment on it. You don't agree with it. You tag two people over there and they like it. And we're building up ideas. And sometimes you start seeing all the ideas, as you know, and sometimes 2 or 3 ideas trigger another idea. Like, oh my gosh, you know, it's like a super idea and it just snowballs. And so that's been our experience with this. This is a very social way to be able to get people together, sharing ideas and engaging. So, and I said innovation is not easy, but what choice do you have? You can't give up. Okay. Change is difficult. Okay. Technology is quickly changing at a very fast pace. And, you know, the cost, and I'm not sure if you're for profit or nonprofit, but time is money. Okay. Wasted time is lost opportunity, and it's being efficient too long and paying too much. And so this is it's an ongoing effort. It's a full-time function. It's not a checkbox, not a PowerPoint deck you do once a year. It's a full-fledged function that the organization needs to align within the organization. Okay. I want some good questions. Okay, please. Liz, is that your job? Are you the moderator? Okay.
Yes,
All right.
I will bring the microphone around. If you want to answer questions, I would just pass it between you two.
Okay.
So yes, when you have a question, we have time for probably only 2 at this point, but just say your first name and what company you're coming from today or organization. Any questions? Okay.
Good. Thanks.
Hey, Nick from IdeaScale, you mentioned several times that innovation is not about technology, but you gave a couple examples of technological innovations, the FIDO, the Neuralink predictive analytics. My question is, what skills gaps have you found within the organization to enable those technological innovations to be successful once you chose them?
So, restate that. So what skills?
You've got all these technologies that you've added in, but I imagine that the skills of the existing workforce don't exactly align to these technologies using acoustic FIDO detection or Neuralink. So where have the skills gaps been and how have you addressed those?
Yeah, so good question. And thanks for breaking the ice. I appreciate that. That means more questions will come. We had a skeptic group of technicians out in the water when we did the leak detection using these little devices to listen. And we had the vendor with us to do a couple of demonstrations, and we began to see the results. So the staff, they got engaged. They were kind of reluctant, kind of like, this sounds too good to be true. They saw the results, and then they did it themselves, and they saw the results again. And then we had some false negatives or false positives, and we understood what went wrong, and we found out that we did it during a real busy time of the day. There was interference. There were jackhammers going off and bells going off and trucks. And so we don't do this at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We do it at 2 in the morning, okay? And we can do it automatically as well at 2 in the morning. So doing is believing, okay? And you have to convince others that the problem can be solved. There's a better way of doing it than what we've done in the past. And we've been able to, we can't force it on people. We have to get them involved, engaged, and then the results speak for themselves. Okay. And some still don't get it, but most of them do. And there's always going to be some naysayers, but more than likely, we're going to convince people that there's almost always better ways. Okay. Good question. Thanks. This is your question, Dolly.
I have a loud voice. I don't technically need a mic, but this helps. I'm Cecil with Question Pro, and I'm very new to this industry, day 8. But my background is in technology, and I was really encouraged and excited about a lot of your talk was about engagement, like people are your best asset, right? And so my question is, and you mentioned at the very beginning that you're trying to position DC Water and what the problems you're trying to solve is something that's exciting to Gen Z to be a part of the solution. Aside from that, how do you position yourself, or how would you recommend other organizations like this to position themselves as an employer of choice for this upcoming population? Like, people are our best asset. How do we get the best people into these organizations?
We haven't had a real serious problem with COVID and post-COVID, and people were changing jobs and it was hard to replace people. We do have the average age, last time I heard, it was around 50 years old. Okay, so it tends to be higher in the utility business than in the other sectors. We have a number of things that we're doing. We have to be able to provide a pipeline of new talent, new people. We have an apprentice program where we look at mostly DC people, because we are a DC company, but serving Maryland and Virginia. But we look at entry level. We look at people who might work in a garage, mechanic or a painter, okay? Or other people just have an interest and they come in and they're an apprentice. They get paid, they get benefits, but for 2 or 3 years, they're an apprentice, okay? They learn, okay? And they learn by doing and working with others who are experienced. So it's OJT. So that's one way that we're providing entry level for those blue collar jobs, okay? Dolly is here on behalf of about 35 other college interns, a little bit more professional, okay? But engineers, innovators, operation specialists, we're looking, and we hire some of those college interns, okay? We're looking, by the way, we've got several openings if you're interested on our website, but we engage. We've got full-time recruiters here. We also have contract recruiters, but we can scale. So, but we're not struggling too much. We have had some turnover, people leaving for more money. We lost a number of AI people to Google, and they're sucking up all the AI people, but we're replacing them. We're resilient in that respect, but it's multiple sources or channels, and it's a concerted effort to kind of take a look at what we need, looking at the exit interviews, why they're leaving. Is it money? Is it something else? We have succession planning here, so if I was to leave, I'd have someone take my place. So we have that as well. But that's what we do. So we're always looking at different sources and bringing in people. Okay.
I think that's the end of this Q&A for now.
Oh,
I know. Well, there'll be more time for networking later, though, one-on-one Q&A. Can we get a round of applause for Robert and Dolly? I got it. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you both. That was great. And now I'm going to ask for Crystal Banks to come up to introduce our next speaker. Crystal is head of CSM's Customer Success Managers here at IdeaScale.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm going to introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is Abigail. Desjardins. She is, let me get her title correct, it's pretty long. The Venture Portfolio Director, Director of Enterprise Services at NSIN, and U.S. Department of Defense. So she's amazing. Here she is. Round of applause for Abby.
Thank you. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. By show of hands, how many of you are familiar with Defense Innovation Unit? Handful. How about the National Security Innovation Network? Oh, more hands. That's fantastic. Okay. So yes, I am a Department of Defense employee, which means I have many additional duties on top of my official job. So Crystal was correct. My primary job is the Venture Portfolio Director, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. And then the additional duties is the Director of Enterprise Services, which encompasses many, many different elements. But I am very thankful for the contractor team that I have. One of them is here with me today, Megan. But I cannot do this without the fantastic people that we have supporting us. So thank you to all of them. All right, without much further ado, so the National Security Innovation Network has gone through a couple of name changes, but we have landed right now on NSIN. We are organizationally aligned within the Defense Innovation Unit, and that is a recent change with the appointment of Doug Beck to the Director of Innovation, or sorry, the Defense Innovation Unit as a direct report to the Secretary of Defense. So we are still getting used to what does that mean to now be organizationally aligned to the Secretary of Defense, no longer within one of the sub-elements. We have been around for just 6 years at this moment in time. We started as a fledgling concept out of NYU in New York City to kind of prove, does it work to have the Department of Defense innovate? What does that look like? And since then, we have grown. We are now officially a program of record within the department, meaning we have a budget. It is very nominal. So thankfully, those on the Hill, just a few feet away, have enjoyed what we have done. And every year we have enjoyed some additional funds that come our way. But all of what we do is focused on helping to innovate the industrial base within the United States. That mission has been expanded most recently with Doug's desire to have us collaborate with our international partners and allies. So now we are very much under the mindset that the United States cannot innovate our defense industrial base alone. We need to do this with our our international partners and allies. That the United States is excellent in some areas, and there are other areas where we have fantastic capabilities that we need to harness and leverage. And so we are embarking upon several international activities which are actually leveraging the IdeaScale platform today. We have 2 prize challenges, which we award non-dilutive, so we just give money to the best vendors, and we're doing that in partnership with IDEX, which is the Indian version of DIU overseas. So we sit at this intersection of the Department of Defense, venture, which includes venture capital, and academia. So recognizing that, much like the previous speaker articulated, that people are where ideas come from, and the best people don't always work for us. We have a recognition that the Department of Defense has not harnessed the fantastic and amazing talent and technologies, capabilities, process change that exist across the entire United States. For far too long, we have been focused on the major vendors and primes that exist within like a, 5-mile proximity to the Pentagon. And so we launched a national network where we have folks who are embedded right now. I think it is in 26 states, 37 people who have a responsibility for establishing trust and rapport, not just with the Department of Defense mission partners who are based in their geographic areas, but also with the academic institutions, the students, the venture capitalists, and the startups, to include early to mid-stage startups. But we cannot innovate without having trust. And we establish that trust by having people who are embedded geographically in proximity to those fantastic epicenters of innovation and thought. Let's see what else we want to say. The slide's out of date because it was approved for public release, so apologies. But the bottom right, we have just announced our on-ramp hub. So it was the Mission Acceleration Center. It's now the on-ramp hub, which is meant to be one of the front doors to the Department of Defense. They are brick and mortar buildings in Arizona, Hawaii, Kansas, Seattle, and I always miss the last one when I do the list. It'll come back to me at some point in time, unless Megan, do you know? Ohio, thank you. These are places that we have chosen as areas of interest for the department for a variety of reasons, and they are meant to be a collaborative space. So unlike the experience of walking into this beautiful building, there will be no real barriers. So anyone who wants to work with the department, anyone who wants to be partnered with a venture capitalist who is interested in investing in the dual use space can walk in. So we're going to try this out, see how it goes. We have one in Seattle that has been in execution for the past year, and that was in partnership with the Navy. It went really well. So we said, let's do this in additional locations. So more to come on what that looks like and timelines for rolling out. But each location will have access to the IdeaScale platform that we have. And I've got a couple of great ideas that percolated today about how I want to better leverage the platform at each one of those on-ramp hub locations. Let's see if I forgot anything there. All right, so I've touched upon this, right? We've got these 3 pillars of activity at NSIN. Network building, I talked about that with our regional network team. Now that we are firmly embedded within the Defense Innovation Unit, we are also figuring out what does it look like to be aligned to the activities that DIU is taking lead on. So the Joint Mission Acceleration Directorate based out of Indo-PACOM, the replicator activities. So all of those things are percolating, and we will play a role in helping to feed amazing technology and capabilities that we're sourcing from academia, from the early stage venture community, and from our international partners into those activities. The second thing that we do is programming. So that's my first official hat, is the venture portfolio. So I've alluded to prize challenges. We also do accelerator programs. Those are multi-week cohort programs that we do centered around a particular DoD problem set. And that one, we've got a demo day happening up in Boston in December. It's open to the public. If anyone is in Boston, December 3rd, and wants to go to Gillette Stadium, you're welcome to come. Just let me know. But that one, we have a 5% acceptance rate. So we are seeing many, many more companies apply for participation in that programming, which is phenomenal, given the fact that there is no funding given out and there is no guarantee of a contract on the back end. It is all about customer discovery. It's all about having the opportunity to engage with Department of Defense mission partners through the course of the cohort accelerator program. We also do our best to help bring in other folks who have interests that are very, very similar. Which brings me to the next program that we have, which is called Challenges. I mentioned we're doing 2 with India right now. We also did one, which I wish that he was still here. I think he just left, for the Navy on naval tank inspection. So we looked at detecting corrosion in water tanks, both on land and in ships. And so we did that in 2 phases where we did an open call to industry. We had, I want to say, 40 companies apply. Many of them actually were coming from the oil industry, who were very interested in breaking into the Defense Department. And they went through and they pitched their ideas. So at the time, we did not have IdeaScale. So we used a different platform, which I'm super happy we're not using anymore, but I will not mention it. And we have, we invited them, the top performing companies, to go out to San Diego to actually demonstrate, because proof is in the pudding, proof is in seeing the capabilities. We had one the Navy was in love with through their pitch, absolutely in love with it. Like, this is it. I've got $1 million. I want to award a contract. And then they saw it get loaded off the back of a semi truck with a forklift. And they said, just kidding, this is not going to work on a naval tank. So we said, that's great. So that company went back, took that information, and now they're working on pivoting their solution based upon the feedback that they received. And we look to see what comes next for that company. But at NSIN, we sit kind of now at the Secretary of Defense level. So we have a recognition that not all problems are unique. And so I mentioned the the water example that we did a challenge around because I wish that DC Water was in attendance. They would have seen the solutions that had been pitched. They may have been able to identify some really fantastic capabilities that the Department of Defense is interested in and maybe investing in. And there can be efficiencies that are gained, not just at the Department of Defense level, nor the intelligence community level, but also at the federal level, or sorry, the state level, local level. There we go. And then last but not least, we have other programming that's focused on tech transfer. So we have programming that's really focused in on looking at tech that's been developed inside of federal labs. So UARCs, which are University Research something, I'm terrible at acronyms, FFRDCs, federally funded research development centers, and then also just at our federal labs. So Army Research Lab, Air Force Research Lab, technology that's been developed for a particular application, or just that scientists loved their idea and they just wanted to do it. And so we go in, we do a commercial viability assessment of that technology. And then we bring it out to industry, either through pairing that through entrepreneurs who are just excited about seeing what they could do with some government funded tech, or to startups to see if they'd be willing to pivot their solution offering to take that technology into account. And we've had phenomenal success. We have spun out, I want to say 50 startups in the last 4 years through that programming, and countless licensing, CRADAs and all of that. So it's been really exciting to see what you can do when you intentionally expose ideas developed in one area to a different population. And then the other side of NSIN, which I do not do enough justice to, is the talent portfolio. And the talent portfolio really focuses in on people, individuals. We have fellowship programs, internship programs. We leverage capstones that every single academic institution has and said, hey, wouldn't it be a great idea if instead of letting these students work on ideas that may not be of interest to us, we intentionally inject Department of Defense problem sets into the capstone programs. And then at the end, maybe we get a really great idea, or maybe we get a process improvement. And so that program, I have no idea actually how many institutions we have, but it's a lot across the United States. And it's not just the R1 academic institutions, it's R2. We're also looking at unrolling this at community colleges, as well as at high schools. So we've got a lot of ideas of how do we help harness the talent and bring it into the department. And then the third pillar that we have is focus on transition. So the other hat I have, Director of Enterprise Services, I have a group called the Transition Cell. So it's really, really focused on helping to ensure that the folks who touch our network, either through our programming or through contacts with our regional network team, have someone that they can go to who can answer their questions, who can say, I see this fantastic request for proposals or a broad agency announcement or this challenge idea. What does the government mean? And how do I do this? And what do I do? Or I am in consult with a VC firm and they just gave me the following terms. Is that good? I don't know. So I'm a college student, so help me. And so we help provide them with advisory support so that they can actually apply the knowledge that they're gaining from the conversations with our team and not walk away going, we still don't know what to do. So the on-ramp hubs kind of fit into that transition pillar as well. As you can tell, we're really focused on helping to ensure that the fantastic ideas and technology and processes that we're harvesting from across the United States and internationally are making their way in some way, shape, or form, as long as it makes sense, right? So we are also really focused on helping matchmake and partnering. So I'm the first to say that the hundreds of companies we engage with in our programming on a yearly basis are most likely not going to get a prime contract. It's not going to happen. Doesn't mean their solution isn't going to get fielded or tested or rolled up. Most likely that's going to happen through a partnership agreement, through some sort of subcontract agreement or some other means. And so one of the ways that we have been looking at IdeaScale is to try and figure out how we incentivize that partnership, that interactive, that collaboration piece of that IdeaScale offers. Because we are dealing with companies, we are dealing with people who want to protect their intellectual property. So it's a little bit tricky to figure out how we do that, but we're not giving up. We're going to try and figure it out. All right, let's see. So I mentioned, our national network. Here's just a lovely map because everyone loves maps that shows where we are. This is on the right-hand side, kind of a snapshot of the programs that I talked about. This is a snapshot. These are not all of our programs. We very much follow the lean startup methodology. So we have a ton of pilot activities that we are doing on any given basis. So we build, measure, learn. We figure out, is this something that worked? And then if it works and pending a budget line for us, we will execute it the following year. One thing I do want to quickly highlight is the X-Force Fellowship Program. That is our summer internship program. And this year was the first year that the interns actually used IdeaScale as a way of sharing their ideas and what they were working on. And our program manager was a bit skeptical at the beginning. And I think by the end of the 3-4 month cohort, I think they were bought in. We had really great interaction amongst the team of fellows, which was, I think, around 250 this year. Where they were able to kind of post ideas, they were able to bonus off of each other. And for us, for me as a global admin, I was floored by what I was seeing come through. I don't necessarily have enough time to read them all, but man, was it exciting. I was super happy we had 2 program managers plus a portfolio director who was focused on reading all that stuff. I did not have time. So that was one exciting thing. Everyone loves an NSIN by the number slide. This is always outdated the moment that you put it up. So I won't spend too much time on this, except for I'm personally very excited about the right-hand side of the slide, which talks to what happens after companies, including those that go through our challenges program that have been leveraging IdeaScale to date, have gone on to do. The number on the top is private capital funding. So it's not because of participation in our programming, but it speaks to the caliber of the companies that we are engaging with. That one is now over $10 billion. One of our Propel companies just secured a Series B of $100 million. I think it went public last week on Friday. So things like that are happening on a routine basis. And it is because of our intentional engagement with the community, with the Department of Defense, mission partners, to help ensure that we are pulling in the best technology, the best companies to meet the needs. The bottom right, I don't know the exact updated number for this one, but it's definitely over $3 billion that the companies have gone on to secure after they participated in our programming, which is pretty dang phenomenal, given the fact that that stat is from 2016. It's a hockey puck. Right. So not every single company is getting ginormous contracts, but we have had really great luck with companies going on. And I will also say they are not all SBIR dollars, which is something that I'm personally very proud of. So in a nutshell, that's NSIN. It's a really exciting organization within the department. We are, as I mentioned, at a time of change as we are fully integrating within the Defense Innovation Unit. But what will remain persistent for us is the focus on helping to ensure that we are innovating the industrial base by expanding the innovation base. We are, as I mentioned, we are embarking upon a lot of international activities. So we have I mentioned we've launched the 2 challenges with India. There will be more forthcoming. The first 2 are very Navy focused. We will be doing one for the Army, for the Air Force, and for the Marine Corps element. That's kind of akin to over there. And then we'll also be doing some other programming under the broader InduSX umbrella. We are going to be doing a challenge with Australia and the UK very soon. We'll be launching that one on the IdeaScale platform in December. And we are looking at helping to establish partnerships with Singapore and Japan to also help bring in some of the technology and the ideas that, as I mentioned, our international partners and allies have within their industrial bases. So with that, I will pause. I know I spoke very quickly and it was a lot of information, but if you guys have any questions, I will be happy to field them. Otherwise, I may have just given us time back and put us back on track. Yes. Oh my gosh, there are so many. Which Valley of Death? I'm sure Sabra, who just walked in, will probably address this in her remarks as well. I think at last count, there are 5 or 6 valleys of death. So it really depends upon where you are sitting and which valley of death you are looking at. The traditional valley of death is taking a piece of technology and getting it across from either the wireframe or the prototype phase into a production contract or getting it into a program of record. But there's also the valleys of death of I've got a great idea and I have no idea who to go talk to and how do I move beyond this phase. There's the valley of death of I've got a great idea, and I don't have access to a testing environment. So I cannot advance it beyond a TRL 7 or 5. And so it's helping those companies try and advance over that particular valley, but there's a lot of them. Any other questions?
I'm coming.
Good afternoon. How do you project now that you're under a new alignment under the SecDev? That is amazing. First of all, to have that level of authority, right? I want to say at your fingertips, if you will. So what is your short-term plans to leverage being under the SecDev?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. Time is of the essence. We got to figure out what our big ticket asks are so that we can work on those. But thankfully, Mr. Doug Beck, is at the helm of helping us to figure out how do we best leverage the fact that we're now sitting at the Secretary of Defense level. For us at NSIN, we have always been cross services. So I myself am an Army employee. My colleagues are either from the Navy or from the Air Force. So we have always had a focus on working across the services to ensure that we are pulling in the problem owners from every single service when it's appropriate and when it's applicable. So that is a big focus now of being elevated to SecDef, is that we are able to help really ensure that we're working united and breaking down those stovepipes that do exist, and helping to ensure that if a capability is identified or funded at a production level, for the Army, but it meets a Navy need, that we can help ensure that that is also made aware. Additionally, sitting at the SecDef level means that we're able to have an impact on what are some of those persistent and very annoying barriers to companies being able to access the department. And so we're able to actually now be at a position, at a level where we can help to raise those to the appropriate level and have a very, very strong voice. If you've heard Doug speak recently, he talks about DIU 2.0. Or DIU 1.0 was making sure that the building, meaning the Pentagon, was going out and talking to companies. And so a metric of success, did the meeting happen? Did somebody go in? DIU 2.0 was showing that you can leverage other transaction authority to get capabilities very, very quickly prototyped and then put onto a production contract. And now DI 3.0 is about making that strategic impact. And so it's now having a seat at the broader tables when they are going through the JSIDS process or when they are going through the bigger requirements conversations, to help ensure that we are thinking about innovation first and foremost, and that we are doing what we can to help ensure that those barriers are removed or lowered.
Other questions? Anyone?
All right, well, I will be here for the rest of the day. So if you guys have questions or want to talk to me about something, I will be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, welcome back to IdeaScale's 1GovSummit. I want to reiterate for all of you here in person and online how unique and special of an opportunity this is to bring the change makers and what we call the crazies in government, the passionate people together to create change and break down these silos. And our next speaker today, a dear friend and a wonderful person and innovator, I'd like to introduce Sabra Horne, the author of Creating Innovation Navigators and the lead of the Corollary Training course and entrepreneur in residence at BMNT. So please join me in welcoming Sabra Horne.
And thank you so much, Tim. I'm thrilled to be here. And I will also say, While I was at CISA, my last role in government, the last of 15 years, I tried so very hard to bring IdeaScale to CISA, and I'm excited that you guys are doing it. I'm going to be talking about partnerships, and I can't imagine a better way to frame what it is that I'm talking about, because this is all about partnerships. So, wanted to tell you a little bit about why I'm here to talk about partnerships. I had 15 years in government. The last, I was at CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. My last job there was to stand up the Innovation Hub, which was, I have to say, the most exciting of all the 15 exciting years that I had. But I started not long after 2001, 9/11. I came to government to help be part of the fight, and I was excited to be able to come to that. And I was always thrown into roles where I had to do something different, and I had to engage with people, and I had to get them to do difficult things that we had never done before. First, I was at the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, working open source collection. I was then at the Department of Justice, leading all of our communications and public engagement. I went to the National Security Agency, worked on some interesting things I'll tell you about. I was also Deputy Director of Information Security, Deputy Director of Information Sharing and Collaboration, and then came to CISA to help head up their engagement and stakeholder engagement and to transition the agency. So always asked to do something very different. And I realized very early on that the power of what we're able to do really is so much about being able to engage other people and to do that in a way that really expands what it is that we're doing in a way that we couldn't do on our own. And so I first wanted to ask people here, and I hope that we have a bit of a dialogue between us all. Tell me where you guys are from so that we can hear various agencies. I want to hear where you are, because I'm going to ask a question next that's going to be relevant. So tell me where you're from. Department of Labor. Okay, who else? What other places do we have here? Excellent. DISA. All right, what else? Wow, okay, great. Federal housing. Where else? Oh, DOT, fantastic. All right. Yes. Oh, welcome. We love our international partners. All right, great. And then right here. Wonderful. Okay, great. Do we have any DOD folks besides Abby? I'm not gonna. Great. Okay, wonderful. So the point I was going to make is that, as we know, so very much is going on in this world right now. However, those of us who are doing innovation, those of us who are trying to make great things happen with the workforces that we're working with, we have constrained resources. We know that we are being asked to achieve a mission in ways that we cannot possibly achieve with that which we've been given. Everything is constrained, and it feels like, whoops, feels like it is basically a ball around our leg, dragging us behind what we're trying to achieve. We cannot move forward quickly. And so the challenge really is, how do we speed up what we're doing? How do we really move forward at a totally different level so that we can make great things happen? And all of this is really about trying to make mission impact happen as much as possible. And so we are challenged. How do we move forward as quickly as possible, given all of the constraints that we have in this incredibly difficult time that we find ourselves in? So, what are the challenges that we have to innovation? Let me hear your challenges, because we know you guys have them. What are some challenges? All of the things that I've listed here. However, okay, tell me what your challenge is in coming from overseas. Maybe perhaps it was actually just getting, say it again? Funding, absolutely. We know that funding is absolutely critical, and that we are oftentimes limited in that which we're being given and that which we can access. And sometimes you do have a fairy godmother, a fairy godfather. That doesn't always happen. What are other challenges? Culture, say more about that. Yes, it does. That's right. That's right. That's right. Great point. Culture is always going to be a challenge unless we are in a culture that is completely focused on moving quickly with creativity and doing so in ways that achieve mission immediately. But that's almost no place. Yes. Right. Where do you start? How do you get going? How do you get moving? I've got an answer for you in a moment. So we know we have so many challenges, but how do we really move forward at a different pace? And I would say we know there are basic constraints that we are working with, right? We know that we have a certain amount of funding, and that's what we're being given. And unless we can advocate for something different, we're not going to get any more. We know we have finite staff, and unless we can somehow acquire more, it's not going to happen. And I will always hope that somehow I'll be able to make sure that the clock gets more hours to us in each day, but it hasn't happened yet. So I'm a big believer in the power of partnerships because it allows you to do things that you want to do and you haven't been able to do and you can envision, but yet you don't have the resources to do so on your own. It brings ideas to you in ways that you couldn't possibly have imagined. You have other folks who are doing amazing things in other agencies that you'd love to make use of. And this is a way I think that we can really move forward in what we're trying to achieve and get mission impact much more quickly. I will also say I've had the grand fortune of working with some folks, and I'll highlight some of the examples of partnerships I've had, and I want to hear about y'all's as well. But it's really amazing to me how you can link up with people who are doing exceptional work. And it brings to you, when you're able to partner with them, the ability to do things at a totally different level. And that teaches your folks back at home, here's how we can do this as well. So very powerful in so many ways. I am a big believer in the concept of expanding the pie. Who knows what that is? It means at the beginning of the day, we have a finite amount of resources and time and energy and money and tools and things that we're going to work with. But how do we grow that pie by either thinking about new ideas that we can harness from outside or creating partnerships that would allow us to expand that pie? So if you think about how do I make more of what I'm doing right now, that will help you find some of these opportunities for how you might partner more effectively. Again, it makes best use of all the limited resources that we have available to us. I'll highlight some of the ways that I've grown the resources I had. I will say I'm very proud of the fact when I started at CISA, building up the Innovation Hub, I had one GS13 and $0. And at the end of the year and a half that I was doing that effort, we had achieved so very much and had gotten so very many partners brought in. So it is possible to make great things happen. I did not want to hear from any DoD people right then, because that's a rounding error, right? So this was, for me, was something that I learned late, which is you can fill gaps that you actually don't have available to you in terms of the existing skill sets that are taking place or apparent within your workforce. You can access people from other places and bring those skill sets in. You can access authorities, and this was huge for us at CISA. We had a ton of authorities at DHS, but we didn't know how to use them. So we had to work with others to figure out how to use them more effectively. We can get to the end more quickly than we could if we did it by ourselves. And sometimes we can improve the quality of the deliverables because we can work with people who are more experienced than us sometimes. So bottom line though, this is not a skill set that is taught in government. And this whole brief, and actually I just, we have a blog that just appeared on bmnt.com that kind of gives you a little more context to all of the comments I'll make today. I came up with these ideas based on the fact that one of my wonderful folks that I get to work with, they've heard me talk about partnering and how important partnering is, blah, 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 blah. We had a 3-day course. They heard me talk about it over and over and over. They came to me and said, you know, we don't really know how to partner. Can you talk to us about what that looks like? And so I came up with the comments we're going to hear today, and I'd love to hear your thoughts if you have some other good ideas. And I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts about how you've made some good partnerships happen. But we've not been taught these skill sets. So we need to learn them, and we need to figure out how to help pass these to all of our colleagues. So let me give you a little bit of a case study. When I was at CISA, I was asked to stand up innovation from scratch. What might this look like? I will say that I was given the luxury of time, 2 months, to basically call all kinds of people. I'm sure we talked to Abby way back when, and find out what's all that's taking place across the US government in innovation. What does it look like? How's it operating? What capabilities do we have? And so I learned a ton. What I learned is there is so very much going on out there. And me, myself, and I, and my dear colleague who is GS13, we could make use of all of those great resources we had available to us. So I immediately started creating partnerships. And the first that I undertook was calling up DIU. Which had amazing capabilities and amazing authorities, especially the Commercial Solutions Opening Pilot Program, which also DHS had available to us. We just didn't know how to use it. So I called up Mike Madsen, and we had a fantastic chat. And basically, we were able to craft a partnership where I was able to send the gentleman at CISA who was in charge of enterprise architecture. He went and learned how to use CSO. He had also had a background in acquisition. So what a perfect person, right? An IT and an acquisition background to make incredible use of that. So we were able to learn the lessons and get much faster at being able to use that authority. Next, we were also able to work with Air Force, which was amazing. And we got a capability called CREAS. And we were able to use the CSO authority to purchase that. So we worked with the procurement innovation lead at DHS. We worked with our emergency communications division. We were able to bring about this great, rich collaboration that we wouldn't have been able to build together. And we were able to buy that in 18 days. So thank you, Air Force, and thank you, the partners at CISA. We had some other great experiences as well, but it was all about putting together collections of people that resided in different organizations, different agencies, and outside of the federal government as well to make some great things happen. All right. So I'm a believer in that. Successful partnerships are about really understanding what you're doing, where you're going, and how you're going to get there. Because if each of the partners don't understand how they can play a role, we are all going to be lost at the end of the day. All right. I wanted to first hear a little bit about some of the good partnerships that you all have created and how you've been able to do that. So any volunteers that want to talk about something they're excited about? Oh, thank you so much, Lizzie. Yes, I know you've got a good one you're thinking of. Oh, you guys, okay, I'm just going to start calling on people. Good for you.
Okay, well, a couple years ago, we, as Department of Labor, we call them dialogues, but they're public facing when we use IdeaScale platform. And most of our dialogues are internal to Department of Labor. We partner with other agencies. However, we did partner once with the Department of Transportation. And we launched a dialogue to gather ideas on how to make autonomous vehicles more accessible. And this is under, the Office of Disability Employment Policy. So majority of our dialogues are focused on how, incorporating disability policy within that. We also are going to launch another dialogue with Department of Transportation coming up in a few weeks. And that's going to be on how to innovate and advance the public transportation systems to make them more accessible to people with disabilities so they're able to get to work easier now, in our post-pandemic era.
So it sounds like you were looking for people who were doing things that were related to where you wanted to go, where you thought you could go, and somebody who was going to be able to get you there as well.
Exactly.
There you go. So that's what it's really all about, is being able to figure that out quickly. And so I would first start with enter a partnership with a great, willing attitude. This is also not a skill set that's taught in government very much, which is lean forward, be excited, show enthusiasm, show that you want to make this happen. I've seen so many meetings where people freeze up and get frigid because they're afraid they're going to break rules or they're going to somehow get in trouble or they don't really understand the constraints of what it is they're doing. But if you show enthusiasm about what you're doing, that is going to get you so far, and you can work through the difficulties in ways that you couldn't possibly have before. I think this is a big, big piece of it, which is do your homework before you go into the engagement, because if you understand what you're willing to give and what you feel comfortable with and what your objectives are and your goals are, and you understand a little bit about your partner as well, and you feel comfortable, you'll be able to gain so much more from that conversation, and they'll feel enthusiastic about being part of that as well. So understand what it is that you're willing to give, what you're not willing to give, what your red lines are, where you're not going to go. I mean, certainly I've spent a lot of time in the intelligence community. Obviously, you've got very great concerns about domestic versus international. You've got concerns about US persons information. Those are all things that we have to take into consideration and really ensure that we've thought carefully about it. But also know what you're good at. What do you all do well, and what can you bring to the table? But also, what are you weak at, and how can you shore those up in a totally different way? And so I will say I do count, I'm a big fan of contractors. And so I see them as partners as well. I don't see them as others. So I wanted to highlight one really important partnership that we had when I was at CISA. I was asked to oversee the organizational change from the previous agency to the new component agency. And we were supposed to understand the full range of personnel, resourcing, how it broke down across the entire organizations. But I will tell you, we probably didn't have the best understanding of that. So we were able to find a company that had a bunch of engineers. Thank you all so much. It's called IT Cadre. They did a fantastic job of helping us really understand at the most granular level things about our organization in terms of where money resided and all of this. We wouldn't have known on our own. We could have spent years trying to do it. They helped us so very much. So again, find what you need, find who can make that happen, and bring that to you to shore up your own weaknesses. It's about finding what you're comfortable in and making those things happen as well. I wanted to highlight one other thing. What are the goals that you have? Sometimes you can't achieve your goals unless you're able to work with someone else. So I was chief of staff at the National Maritime Intel Center, and we were charged with creating a unification of maritime intelligence across the community in a way that had never been done before. But yet we had basically only 66 people to do that. So we're not going to know all of the entirety of maritime intelligence across the community. So we're going to have to work with Navy and Coast Guard and FBI and all of these other agencies to really bring together a powerful union of that information. So for the first time ever, we created a 4-seal analytic report, and we're able to bring together the resources from all of these various agencies that created a more powerful understanding of a principle than we would ever have had on our own. So I think that's a great example of the kinds of things that we want to make happen. Also, think about what you might do together. What are you trying to achieve? What can you not do on your own? Dream big, dream about what you might be able to make happen. There are amazing things that can happen if you only think creatively about what is my goal and where am I trying to go. One of the opportunities I had when I was at the National Security Agency, I came 5 days after Snowden released the classified information. It was on a small team of people who had to help work that issue. We understood that the American public didn't understand what the National Security Agency did at all, because back then, this was 2013, we were NSA, no such agency. Nobody had ever heard of NSA. They didn't know what we did. They didn't know how we worked. They didn't know that we followed rules. They didn't know that we had 100 compliance lawyers that helped us each and every day. I promise you, each of us said the word compliance probably 5 times in a day. How crazy is that? So my big goal was, how do we help really the public understand what we're doing better? So there were 2 key partnerships that we made happen. One was, I happen to know the gentleman who was at the NCIS department, communications department, and y'all heard of the show NCIS, right? It was the best-selling show, most popular show on the planet for many, many years. So worked with the producers of NCIS to help create NSA characters. There were 2 characters that eventually became part of the ongoing effort, and they appeared time and time and time again. They were based on 3 analysts, 3 young women within NSA, an exciting time that we were able to really communicate about, here's what this agency is doing, and here's how they operate, and they're not breaking laws. So that was a partnership we could have never thought of unless we'd really dreamed big. Another one that was really so very important during that time was we worked with a group of folks who basically did a pulsing of social media. And back at 2013, this was a big deal. They pulsed papers and they found out, here's what the American public is thinking. And they were able to help us craft messaging so that leaders were able to really communicate that in a different way. So again, think big, think about what you might be able to make happen. And how do you create a partnership so that everybody gets something out of it? Again, we already talked about the importance of attitude. You really want to make sure that you are helping move forward the relationship in a totally different way. If you're hesitant, if you're nervous, if you don't know what your boundaries are, you're likely to be communicating that quite frequently. So during the engagement, you also want to think about, how are we exploring all of the opportunities here, and how are we moving forward in a totally different way? And so the point I wanted to make here was, I think, a great example of how you might be able to bring together different people is to think about specific areas where you're missing, where somebody else is needing this. And so when I was at CISA and the election task force was stood up, we had to really help understand for the 2016 presidential elections that had been penetrated by Russia, how do we help the states understand what is taking place? But the states didn't have access to any of the intelligence. So we were able to help partner with the intelligence community and bring the state and local representatives of election infrastructure, bring them to bear so they could understand the intelligence. We gave them clearances for a day and they were able to see the information. So again, it was utilizing another agency to help bring together the power of the intelligence community. And make sure everybody's pulling their weight. Sometimes you have partners that want to partner and maybe they don't want to do so very much, but everybody's responsible, right? Misunderstandings can happen. So the better you can document what it is that you're doing, whether it is informally or formally, that helps clarify things and everybody is sharing that information so you know exactly what everybody's responsible for. Roles and responsibilities, right? We've got to know who's doing what, when it's due, how you're going to make something happen, because otherwise it will fall through the cracks. And you want to anticipate problems. And I was a little hesitant about putting this part in here, but let's be honest, nothing ever goes according to plan, right? Oftentimes you've got challenges that you can't possibly have envisioned, but if you think about what those things might be before they happen and you watch for signs, you can be much more anticipatory of how you might be able to ward off something that is coming down the road that you hadn't actually envisioned. And there are a lot of different ways you can see various signs of what that might look like. Lack of transparency is one that's, I think, a big sign for me that maybe things aren't going exactly the way they need to. And so you want to really be specific, but this is all about communication, right? Good communication and making sure you understand what we all have agreed to. You're communicating and you're stating your needs very frankly and easily. All right. Any examples of great partnerships that you all want to highlight? And because I'm going to call on you guys, you know I'm going to. Okay, gentlemen, right here. Tell me your name. Nick, tell me about a partnership you had and why is it successful and why is it not?
Sure. So when I was working in consulting, which is service-oriented industry, not a lot of technology, but you know, starting about 10 or 20 years ago, technology really started mattering. So the consulting firm I was with at the time, McKinsey, they partnered with a couple of engineering firms that would then do all the data science-y aspects of the analysis. And then McKinsey would do the consulting part. And so there was a basically partnership in going out and serving real organizations, the IBMs, the Hewlett Packards, the General Motors of the world, but combining both the technology aspect, which these technology firms had experience with, and then the soft human consulting aspect that firms like McKinsey did.
Okay. What do you think made that so successful?
I think both organizations realized that they had a skill set that the other organization didn't, and they also did not want to compete against each other and encroach. So there was a trust that, hey, you're not going to compete against me or steal what I'm doing, and I'm conversely not going to do what you're going to be doing.
That's exactly right. So it's finding exactly what everybody is able to succeed at, bringing people together and moving forward together. Okay, I'm going to start going back in the back now. Yes, I love that.
This is a kind of outdated example now, but it's and it's easier because it's actual stuff. But after Hurricane Sandy, there was a lot of snow in places that was blocking roads and a lot of people that had downed wires. And normally electricians do wires and public works or the county or government does the snow plows, but neither one could do their job because it was hazardous. And so they created strike teams, which required bending policies and doing things that were never done before. So they had a police car, so it was a safety patrol to help, make it safe, and then a public utility worker that could do the electrical work, and then somebody who was skilled and licensed to use a chainsaw. So they created these strike teams, and it was, now it makes total sense. I was like, oh yeah, that's how it should work now. But 15 years ago, we had never done that before.
That's right. And so you brought together a group of folks who had a complementary set of skills, couldn't have done it otherwise. And you're able to identify also the gaps. Wait, we're missing somebody who can do the plowing. So we need to bring that person in as well. Great example. Other examples. I see you thinking. Yes.
Yeah, we have several examples. So
good.
I'm a wastewater treatment provider in the Denver area. I don't know, you guys hear me okay? And there's a number of opportunities or examples from internal collaboration, internal partnerships, because we also are challenged with a lot of siloing within our organization. And how do we get out of those silos and collaborate effectively just for any project to be delivered? But I can provide maybe a couple more specific examples just regionally where we partnered with other organizations. So one's kind of fresh on my mind because we were talking about this a little bit earlier as it relates to wastewater thermal energy usage and sewer heat recovery, partnering with the city and county of Denver and the National Western Center, which if you're not familiar with Denver, the National Stock Show is in Denver every year, and the National Western Center is the complex where that stock show is hosted. And they went through a major redevelopment effort, and this was a partnership that worked really well because there was a challenge that we were both able to solve through the extraction of a resource. And for us, it helped with permit compliance in a roundabout way. So two challenges that we were able to both contribute directly to addressing.
It was finding those common goals and being able to get there more quickly. That's exactly right. Perfect. Just a few more things. I think we've got Lizzie. What's our time?
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Great. Make sure that you're measuring what happened. How did it work? What went well? What didn't go well? What are we trying to achieve? How well did we achieve it? Who achieved their goals? Who did not achieve their goals? And how can we improve this going forward? I think oftentimes we get to the end of a project and we're so grateful that it's done, it's over, move on, don't look back. But how often do we try to do the same types of partnerships, but yet there's no record of what happened? We don't have an understanding of what happened. We only have vague recollections of, yeah, that went well. Well, why did it go well? What didn't go well? Because inevitably something is not going to go well. So how do we really take that information and make it work for us in the future? And how do we, as we're moving through the project, adjust what it is that we're doing so that we can tweak and refine as we go so it gets better and better, right? The whole goal is to get consistently more speedy as we go through the process to accelerate what it is that we're trying to do to achieve mission more effectively. Compare before and after so you can see, all right, did we make any progress? Did this really help us in any way? Or is it just probably something that didn't matter at all? But I'm a big fan of, it's always about communications. If we don't really communicate what it is that we're doing, we might as well not have done it at all. analyze what worked, share that around, and modify what you're doing in the future based on what you learned so that you can do this differently going forward. So I think we've got questions still. So want to hear from you guys. What did we learn? What do we need to learn? What are questions that you have about how we might be more effective in bringing that mission impact in a totally different way? Yes.
Just for the people virtually, I want them to hear that too. It was, how do you find?
That's right.
Sorry. You have laid out all these criteria for identifying a partnership, assessing its success after the fact. But ex ante, if you realize that you have a need that you're not able to satisfy yourself, how do you find the appropriate sets of partners in the first place?
Perfect. Thank you, Nick. So I think you go back to the very beginning, which is understanding what it is that you're trying to achieve, what your goals are, what your challenges are, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what your gaps are. If you look at your gaps and you understand the panoply of where you are, you're able to identify more easily on your own, here's what I need to fill, here's where I can go. And you also need to be talking to a ton of people, because what you're really looking for are the opportunities. And you never know in that sidebar conversation that you're going to have in just about 10 minutes when we move to the next part of our enjoyment today. You'll never know unless you're aware of your own gaps and needs and goals. You may hear a data point that pops up and you're like, wait a minute, Abby, that's right. I forgot you're working on blank. I've got an idea. Let's try this, right? So you always are looking, spanning the horizon for the opportunities all the time. And now the challenge is how do you take that panoply of opportunities and how do you really start to turn it into something real? And you want to have, just like we know the world of venture capital works, right? You want to have 10 times what it is you want to make happen before you really start to move through the wickets of, is this going to work? Do our goals match? Do we have similar interests? Do we have similar ways of achieving something? Are we going to be able to make a good collaboration here? The challenge really is if you're not able to go together and move forward together, it's not going to work. So find out soon, find out early, move through it and move on. I will say, you highlighted the CISA example earlier. I was so proud of myself when I was doing all that work. It was a ton of work. We got so much done. But at the end of the day, I realized I didn't have enough opportunities working, because if I achieved all 4 of the big giant things I was working on, I should have had like 15 things that totally bombed. But I didn't realize, right, that it could have turned into something, but it didn't. So I needed to try harder. So I just needed to work more. That's all it was. So, all right. Other questions? That was a great one, Nick. Good. Thank you.
So you cite partnerships as an avenue to achieve a goal more quickly, but do you think that there is a level where there are too many people involved or too many cooks in the kitchen where it actually takes a longer time to get into an agreement? Yeah. And if so, how do you identify the optimal number of partnerships to achieve a goal?
That is such a great question. So how do you identify the right number of partners for a partnership? Sometimes it's more important to have that number of partners than it is to actually achieve the goal. When I was at DNI, I was asked to create the cybersecurity intelligence and analysis plan. And I was asked to partner with some of the agencies, the 17 agencies across the community. I figured because we were trying to use that as a template, not only for the entirety of the community, but we were also trying to establish a template for what had to happen in cyber. It was more important to have buy-in from as many of those agencies that actually did cyber than to actually get something done quickly. So it did take us about 6 months, and it was a ton of churn and back and forth, but I found allies and I found people to work with, and I found people who could help get us to the right place and convince people back at home, here's how we have to make this happen. So it's a balance. Sometimes you do want something to happen quickly, and you have to be able to find a partner who can help you achieve that quickly. Sometimes it's way more important to get the 17. Good question. All right, what else? Oh, now I'm coming back there. I know I'm going off screen. It doesn't matter. All right. Okay, what do you have?
No, you're okay. I'm curious if you have any experience in situations, especially in like discovery-based projects, where you have had partnerships either sour or goals and objectives start to diverge in the middle of a project.
That never happens, ever, 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 ever. And so, but you said exactly the key word, which is when you are doing discovery and you're finding out about potential partners, you want to do that discovery as fast as possible, right? Because if they're not going to be the right partner, you want to know early on. You want to move through it as quickly as possible and realize, wow, this is not a match. Let me pursue something else. So it's that fine line of digging deep, really understanding, really seeing if there's potential there. But sometimes you get to the roadblock and you're just not able to make the same thing happen. So do it quickly. All right, what else? Okay, I'm coming back there. All right, Robert, I know the water department has no problems at all. Okay. What questions do you have?
Yeah, I want the
Yeah,
mic.
you had a great example you told me about earlier. But
I mean, the one that's off the record, that
that
example?
one.
Yeah,
Yes,
okay,
exactly.
yeah, okay. So restate the question, please.
Tell me what questions do you have about partnerships, and have you had a partnership that you've not been able to work through? And what's your question about how you could have done that differently?
Well, I think we've all experienced partnerships where we're not all on the same page. And there's some people that are just closed-minded and just are not open to any change whatsoever. So they can be a cancer to a group. There's no value add. So it's kind of dealing with that and knowing how to recover from it. So what are some of your best practices?
Honesty, just I can see the potential here. I can see where we might be able to go. However, I'm not sure you're in the same place I am in regards to X, Y, and Z. Tell me about that. So I think just knowing in your gut what is going on and then being able to articulate it, that is so powerful. And it's also, right, that's not always a skill set that we learn in government all the time too, right? Which is so much faster and easier to just be super upfront about here are my needs and here's where I'm going. Are you going the same place? There you go. All right.
We have a question.
We got one more question.
Can anyone speak to forming internal partnerships within your agencies? We're CIO, so we're the base of technology. Everybody comes to us, right? But what about your other directorates or departments or divisions? How do you overcome some of those challenges?
I think that's so important and so powerful. And so one of the things I did when I was at CISA was as soon as the Innovation Hub was announced, I started collecting the people who reached out to me and said, oh my goodness, I'm so excited about what you're doing. I want to help you. The first person who called me, bless his heart, he was from CIO. And he was the head of enterprise architecture. And he turned out to be not only a fantastic partner, but we became dear friends. And so it's finding those like-minded people in those various places. And my plan was always basically lay down the org chart and make sure that you have friends all over that org chart everywhere and at different levels, right? Because we know what is being said at the senior level is not what's being said at middle management and not at the workforce level, right? And so you have to understand what's going on down here. How do I get the ear up here? What are the roadblocks to making this happen? So it's finding those allies, bringing them together. I created both within CISA as well as within DHS. I created the formal groups that got together on a biweekly or monthly basis to share information about innovation and ideas about innovation. So it got them excited. It showed them there was progress. It showed them there was forward movement. And then we also sought input from them about what are you all that are doing that's innovative. And so it got them bought into the process. And then they would go back home and talk about within their own organizations, wait a minute, did you hear about blank? So, right, you're trying to create that wind beneath the sails of people who are interested in innovation so that they can go and spread your message for you. So great question. Yeah, Abby, good.
So thank you for letting me add to that from the NSIN perspective. So we have a very distributed team who have a very, very strong bias for action. And so one of the things that we have found is aligning in the incentive structure. So making sure that each element of the organization is moving in the same direction within the line that we need them to be focused in on, and helping to ensure that they are very clear. One of the tools that we have used is a RACI chart. So innovation is very messy. It's very abstract. And like I said, when people have a bias for action, they just move on out. And when they're distributed, you may not find out about that until many months later. And so when you think in advance and you work through the RACI chart, right? Who's responsible, accountable, consulted, or informed, it helps to ensure that everyone knows what they should be focused in on. And then on the back end, when you work on your metrics, you help to ensure that you're incentivizing the collaborative, cooperative behaviors that you want to see for the ultimate objective.
Thank you, Abby. So nice to hear from a fellow innovator. All right, everybody, I'm excited to see the partnerships that you all make happen. If you need anything, give me a holler. And I thank you for being here today. Thanks so much.
Thank you. All right. And thank you so much to all three of our speakers. And thank you, Sabra. It's been great. That concludes the 1GovSummit. The presentation portion, the rest of it will just be some networking, and we will have a refreshment hour at the Royal Sands and Navy Yard at 4 o'clock. And we can, however you'd like to get there. It's a very quick walk. But yeah, thank you so much for coming and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you for everyone joining virtually. Thank you.